All right, excellent. We are recording. Hey, Toby, how you doing?
Very well. Nice to speak to you, Monica.
I know it's so good to see you. It's been way too long, and I haven't really uh, caught up with what you've been working on lately. So let me just introduce you to everyone who's watching. My name, of course, is Monica Cornetti, and I'm the game master at GamiCon and president of Sententia. And I've been doing these pre-conference micro sessions with uh, colleagues that I've met over the years as I ventured into the whole gamification genre of design for adult learning. And Toby was one of my early connections and real influencers in the field. He created a leaderboard that we all actively participated in and challenged each other years ago. And it created a lot of social media impact as far as uh, influencers and people wanting to understand how the leaderboard worked and what is this gamification that you speak of. And then I know Toby, he published a great book that I've used, and just a lot of different areas. So Toby, welcome to the call. So excited to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. It's really lovely to be here, and yeah, thank you for talking, mentioning. Yeah, so that was the gamification gurus leaderboard. That was from 2011, and kind of one of the kind of things that kicked off my specific interest in gamification is just the sheer impact that kind of tool had in a specific community.
Yeah, and when you think about, I know in one of our early conversations, because you were doing this in other areas too, people were creating their own leaderboards, and I know that one of our early conversations was people would kind of get mad at you and call it like, "Well, Toby, why am I not on this board? Like, how did I not even make it?" And I know that that's a really interesting uh, motivator for some people, right? It, depending on what the leaderboard's about, who's on it, how did they get there, how do I get on there? Why didn't you put me on there? All of those dynamics of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And it,
So go ahead.
Yeah, that is human nature, right? So you're just tapping into that human desire to know, that the enticement is the score. What's my score, and how do I rank versus my peers? And that's it's kind of it's something that it's kind of inbuilt into human nature that we kind of want to know the answer to those questions. So that's what makes the leaderboard as a mechanic a kind of a very very useful tool to sort of cut through, particularly when you're trying to, as an L&D professional, trying to influence people. I mean, in that specific example, I mean, the main outcome of putting people on the gamification gurus board is that the social media footprint of gamification as a whole grew, because the gamification gurus were realized that if they wanted to be on the leaderboard, they had to do a good job of their social media profiles, and because the people at the top were the ones who were engaged, driving engagement on social media. So it's just interesting from my point of view that it did work from a kind of a sitting back, 100-foot view, and saying, actually, we want to spread the word about gamification, and actually this helps us to engage a crowd, to motivate them to do more in a specific area.
Yeah, and that's it. I was thinking about how so much content was being produced then too, and some people were really prolific at producing content, and of course that helped the entire community because, and then when somebody new would pop up on the leaderboard, I'd be like, oh, who is that? I haven't known that person before. How can I meet them? And what work are they doing? So yeah, it was a really great tool for that, and used differently than I think the outcome of it in a more positive way than sometimes leaderboards, the impact they can have, because it was about it really was about like that evangelism of gamification globally, because that leaderboard, there were people from all over the globe on it, and that was a great way to connect with other people doing similar work and exploring in different areas. So very
Yeah.
cool. Talk with me about the book you published. What led you to publish your book?
Yeah, so one of that kind of 10-year experience of running kind of score based gamification programs led me really to the kind of two key realizations. One was that there is always a score, whether we actually know what the score is or not. Everybody kind of has a score, whether that's I'm in the office longer or I've done a bit better than you. We've got this kind of concept as humans as how am I doing and what's the score. So I think as leaders, we always there's a real kind of requirement on us to be quite explicit about what the score is, because otherwise people will go off thinking something else. So I wanted to create a book which said to leaders, look, there is always a score. So it's up to you as a part of your kind of leadership responsibility is to define that score and make it explicit for your team. And the book then goes into a little bit of detail in kind of the design questions and the pitfalls to avoid, so that you can actually design the score so that it meets the requirements of the organization and the team. So that's the book. Here it is. There's a it's very short. We have to it's probably one of the shortest books but it's kind of tightly packed, and it's been translated into lots of languages: Korean, Turkish, and most recently this last month has been published in Egypt in Arabic, which I think is one of the apparently it's one of the first gamification books for an Arabic speaking audience. So that's super exciting.
That is exciting, because that is one of the things when we work with our students in the Arabic countries, we always ask, does this need to be translated? And they'll be like, no, like we might like teach it in Arabic, but we'll still use it in English. So that is exciting, Toby. That's very good. I'm thinking of, I can't remember the author's name, but the book is called The Game of Work. And an early influencer,
Chuck Conrad. Yes.
Chuck,
yes. The grandfather of gamification. I love Chuck. Yes.
Yeah. So an early influencer for me, just in leadership, before gamification, before I was even aware that but there's one of his quotes in his book that I use still today in all my leadership classes. And there's three types of employees in the workplace: those who know they're winning, those who know they're losing, and those who have no idea what the score is. They don't even know what game they're playing, right? And so, because everything is measured. And I always, when I'm working with leaders, it's like, oftentimes leaders tell their team members what they don't want, but seldom do they carry it through to tell them exactly, this is how you're being measured. And if we don't have that very clear, then we're just getting evaluated on somebody's opinion. And that can change today, tomorrow, and it's not a safe place to be. So that's really excellent. All right, so Toby, now you've taken another move in your career. So talk with me about what you're doing now.
So I've still got a kind of a leaderboarded as a bit of a side hustle now, and there's still an L&D program running, which I can talk about. But yes. my day job is working at the Bible Society, which is one of the really kind of tasked with taking the Bible not just in the UK but globally, and driving distribution, so traditionally printing, translating Bibles, but also Bible engagement. And that should be the kind of the word which sort of pricks the ears of the gamification people, which is, there's a lot of Bibles that just sit on people's shelves, but we know that if people are reading it, then that actually can transform their life and can bring a real kind of sense of freedom, really. So we want to be trying to encourage engagement in the Bible, not just distribution. So my kind of role at the Bible Society is looking at our digital strategy for doing that.
How fascinating. So is this affiliated with a specific faith doctor? I mean, who started it?
So the Bible Society really kind of sits it sits on the Bible. So we're one of the only organizations whose sole job it is to focus on the Bible, the content of the Bible. So our kind of partners are all different types of churches, really. So from a kind of a very Catholic tradition through to a Pentecostal tradition, Episcopal, Free Church. So everybody kind of agrees on the Bible. That was agreed around 300 AD. So actually the Bible Society is kind of responsible for people getting engaged. We're not so responsible for how churches are formed and what the right church structure should look like.
Yeah, very good. Because I think about growing up, I was raised Catholic, and we went to Mass every Sunday without fail, right? But our Bible, we had a family Bible that I know exactly where it sat on the end table in the living room, but my dad would pull it out on Christmas Eve every year and read from the Gospel of Luke on Christmas Eve. And I think that's the only time the Bible was actually ever opened during the year, right? Because we weren't really encouraged to be reading the Bible from the platform, right? So, but that's really a neat. So you're doing this digital engagement, and so it's a global audience that or do you really, are you focused more specifically in geographically?
Uh, Good. That is a good question, and it's one we kind of work out in different ways. So there are some things that we do globally. So I'm doing a Bible in the Metaverse event where I'm getting the global digital theologians and the people who are practitioners. Lots of people in the US, as you can imagine, at communicating the Bible in a digital format, and they're all coming together in the metaverse to discuss what should the Bible look like when we have the metaverse, and what do we walk through the Red Sea following the Israelites on their journey, or because it's not just it's a multimedia immersive experience. So that's one question we'll be asking in that event, and then in terms of programs that we can do locally, one idea that one pilot we're working on is a Bible themed coding club for youth groups, so that kind of young people aged 9 to 14 can learn coding, but can do it using kind of Bible themed content. So it's something that's something that can fit within their local church setting and amongst their kind of youth group.
Yeah, because that was my next question. As we think about engagement, it's also generationally specific right now. Millennials, Gen Zs are walking away from the Bible or walking towards.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. So the actual answer is it varies enormously. So you have and it varies by country, it varies by church tradition. So we've got a lot of research into the different ways in which people kind of engage with the Bible. We have our personas are things like Bible loving versus Bible nostalgic or Bible dismissive. So there are different ways in which people have a, and we could send you a questionnaire, Monica, and you'd be able to find out which type you were. So it does depend on the persona exactly how we would engage with them.
Really fascinating. I that's so great. And so you mentioned also that there's a learning arm of something that you're doing too. So what is that?
Yeah, so I thought your viewers would be interested. I can share some screenshots just if you want to.
Yeah.
If you want to, just it's always nice to see it. So
yes, isn't that always our first question? Yeah, what's that look like?
What does that look like? What's he doing here?
Yeah.
Whether it's gonna whether it's gonna let me or not is a different question. So let me just try it and see if it will share. Okay, hang on a second. So while it's doing that, if we just think for a second about I'm not gonna be, it's not gonna let me, sorry.
Let you share?
No, let me if I
who can share? All participants who
no,
can
it's not
share?
you. It's
Okay.
it's the old. It's not you. It's me. If I put something into our LinkedIn chat, would
Try
if
it.
you will you if I
Yeah.
put so if I put this in, okay, and then you can bring. I think we'll just do one screenshot because otherwise it's going to be too complicated, and then maybe you can bring out. So I'll talk about it while you see if it comes up. So essentially, the program is. It's a large organization, so it's a kind of a global consulting firm, and they have a desire to use LinkedIn as part of the kind of the way in which the business grows, and so they want their managers. This is a management program really, but they want their managers to be using LinkedIn. And the L&D team are like, well, the trouble is that we don't control LinkedIn necessarily, and those guys are busy in their day jobs, and so how do we kind of influence them in the right way to use LinkedIn more effectively? So, and what they can do is they can say, like, go onto LinkedIn, go and look at your analytics, see how you're doing, and try and encourage them to use the tools. And that works up to a point, but one of the difficulties is that that they don't get to see, as the coaches, exactly what's going on, because all of this activity is happening outside of the organization, so it's not within their kind of control. So what they asked me to do was to say, well, can you go and track what's going on LinkedIn on these for our managers, and then feed back a sort of a general report that we can use to engage them in kind of adopting and performing well on LinkedIn. So very similar to that gamification gurus leaderboard that we talked about before, but specifically within an organization and championed by the L&D department with a kind of a 12-month remit to increase the use of a particular tool and a particular set of behaviors amongst their managers.
Okay, so go back to the why of this again for me. And
Yep.
I'm not seeing the image in the chat, by the way, LinkedIn chat. Did you hit the send button?
I did. It says attached. I'll try again.
I just see you're ready and waiting in the Zoom room.
Yeah,
oh, wait,
why is it?
something's coming.
No,
Here we go.
no.
It says sent. Yeah.
Oh well.
Okay.
I can't. Yeah. So never mind.
All right. Well, we'll send it to me, and I'll post it with the recording. Okay.
With the show notes, guys.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I'll talk about it so you can imagine it. So it looks like a bit like a spreadsheet. Yeah.
Go back to the why for me again. What's our objective?
So the objective is to one of the behaviors they want is for their managers to use LinkedIn more effectively.
For what purpose?
Marketing, sales and marketing primarily.
Okay.
But it's also, it's not just about sales and marketing. It's also about brand. It's about positioning. It's about career development. It's like saying a part of your job as a manager is to show that is not just to be an expert, but to show that you're an expert. And LinkedIn is the primary channel for showing you're an expert in, I don't know, cybersecurity, for example, across your peers and potential customers.
That's really good, because I think about colleagues that I have in the L&D field who worked in big companies, good jobs, big companies, but they were also setting up their own company while they were there, because they became influencers on LinkedIn, right? They were actively sharing content, engaging with people, asking questions. And so very well-known individuals who worked for big companies, but we know the individual. So then the individual moves somewhere else, and we're still connected to that individual. We're not connected to their company as much as that individual, which is great for this organization, as when they tie themselves to this. This is the quality of leaders that we have here. These are people who aren't just promoted because there was no one else to fill that spot. we needed to put someone there, and someone was better than no one, right? I mean, that's really good. That's really good. That's very similar to what you were doing. That's exactly right.
Isn't it funny? Yeah, isn't it funny? The only tweaks on it is that funny enough, getting the data is more difficult nowadays. So if you see what Elon Musk is doing with closing down Twitter, we'll have the same problem with Twitter. LinkedIn closed their API a long time ago now, almost 10 years ago. So the choices that the organization had for getting the data, and this is the bit that sort of blows my mind as an entrepreneurial type, is that you can either spend $1,000 per person to get the data out of LinkedIn, which is can be quite expensive, but some organizations do that, or you can have you get people to manually check it, so they go in themselves and give you the data, or you have we have clerks who go in and look at their profiles for them. And funny enough, though, that sort of having people going and looking at them and putting the data, that's the way we've done it, and it costs, I don't know, it's much less. It's like $200-300 per person per year. So what's been funny for me is that the leaderboard piece is the same, but actually the collection of data has become much more the problem. And I think for other L&D people looking at this will say, oh, actually, I can see where that's coming from. Actually, when you're collecting data, is part of, it's all very well saying we're going to gamify and create a kind of a language of data storytelling, which is how I kind of see it. You've gone up this week, your score has gone up. That's a story, this, rather than just a sort of a piece of a line on a graph. And that bit, you can do all that, but actually there's quite a lot of work just collecting the data.
Yeah, and we have found that too, even for GamiCon. We always used Twitter in the past as a connection piece and very easy to track activity then. we're not even bringing it into the event this year. I've pretty much just walked away from it. I still have my account, but I'm not really engaging. But LinkedIn's a place where everyone's really active, but we're doing that same thing. We're manually walking through just to see, what is tracking, what's having the impact. And I think that's also really good though, Toby, because when you're talking about that narrative that you tell with the data, it's not just that you had this engagement, but let's look at what you were doing that created that, right? Because those are huge learning opportunities of this versus this, that A/B testing of, wow, it was just a few words, right? The way you asked the question rather than telling something. So just those little tweaks on influence, that's really huge. Very good. Very nice. Love it. So great. Don't you love how no matter what you do in your career, and you think, well, that's gone, that's done. But then it cycles, later on, it cycles back and you're like, I know this. I know how to do this. I've done this before. Yeah. I think it's fascinating how that happens.
It's so interesting how, and I think part of it is a digital skill, right? It's that understanding of digital culture that keeps coming back. And I think, to get to the stage where you've got to grips and you've actually run gamification programs requires quite a bit of digital understanding to get there, doesn't it? And I think that's one of the things I'm learning in the new role is that actually you kind of have to get those building blocks in place first, but then once they're there, then kind of the tools and techniques of gamification can really allow you to polish and shine the experiences or whatever it is you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, and if you're inside a closed organization like our higher ed, for example, they can like navigate that easier because it's just contained within this. So the students' interaction, I can track that more easily than if it's out here in this more open world where it's organically happening and we don't know who is actually engaging with it. Let me see. I see something about a message coming from you. Let me just see if I can just bring this up.
Don't worry.
I don't see it. All right. I'll share it in that post. We'll fix it in post.
Fix it in post-production. Yeah, that's what post-production's for, isn't it? Great.
All right. Well, Toby, so this is, they came to you again. It's that whole idea of influence and motivation and engagement. So if someone comes to you with an idea of wanting to engage an audience and they know that you've done, you've written a book, that you understand how gamification works, and if they were to ask you, what is this gamification that you speak of? What do I need to know? What do you think would be the most important thing you'd want to tell that individual that they should know?
I think
the data.
I think the most important thing, the most important thing is to avoid the kind of the most usual mistake, which is to overplan the first thing you do and underplan for iteration. And I think that's what if gamification in our kind of whatever it is since we've been doing it, since the word was invented and so on. I mean, the one thing that I see time and time again is that you're dealing with human behavior, and that's fundamentally, you're never quite sure how people are going to react, and so the whole kind of approach to gamification, your whole approach to doing anything should be, let's try something, let's see how people react first, and then let's iterate. And I think if you look at some of the work of Amy Jo Kim, who's kind of come a long way further on this and is starting to look at products and stuff, you look at how she encourages her students to work on the hook first, on which is the bit that keeps people excited and interested, and then you go back and then you design all the other bits around it. And I think that's a really important lesson for us all, is there are things that you can do which get people engaged in a gamification way, and get that bit right first in your context, whether it's in your school, in your organization, and then you kind of add pieces. So another way of putting it is, don't start with 1,000 badges, start with one.
Right. Yeah. Keep it. Yeah. And I think it's early and often too, right? So get it out there very quickly. There's another, again, I've had so many, just like these one thoughts that change how I interact with the world. And one of those, it was a LinkedIn founder quote that, if you're not embarrassed by your first launch, you waited too long, right? And that's kind of how I run my life.
Perfect.
Let's just put it out there. Let's just see, because we won't know. Like if we try and build it before we even know if it's going to work, we know that's a lot of wasted time and energy. Let's just put it out there and try it. And that you get so much more. My theory is that I'll learn more from giving it to you for 10 minutes than I will spending 10 hours poring over it on my own. That I'll get more insight from you and things that I should have thought of, right? Like, of course, Toby, you're exactly right. I don't know why I didn't think of that, because it's so obvious to see. So yeah, very good. Really good. Toby, thank you so much.
Oh, it's been lovely chatting.
Of a live Gamification Europe happening this year.
Oh, what fun that would be. Yeah, great. If you can make it over, get over the
I know. I'm like,
let
lovely. Me know the dates as soon as we know them, because I really want to get it on my calendar this year, because every year, it falls around our Thanksgiving time, which is still very much family. And if I can know about it far enough in advance, I can make arrangements to, navigate a few days. So delighted to hear what you're working on. So exciting. I'll keep looking for your work out there and see what you're doing. Thank you for spending time with me today. Really delightful. I knew I would enjoy it.
All the best with GamiCon. Super exciting.
Yeah, I hope that you'll be able to pop in. We'll be there for 48 hours, the 26th through the 28th. We're in Remo, so it's Legends Lodge is our floor plan. So it's just a wonderful lodge to enter into. And there's, seating areas and tables and a bar. You'll have to bring it BYOB, but bring your own. But it's just a really nice atmosphere for people to sit down and talk one-on-one and ask questions and get to meet people and extend their network, and very casual, not having to feel pressure of having to connect either, if that makes some people uncomfortable. But I know people would love to visit with you about what you're doing. I can see that very clearly. So if you can stop in, we'd love to have you there.
Well, I would love to do that. Let's try and we'll take it offline. We'll try and find a specific time that you'd like me to pop in for networking.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Toby.
Yep.
All right.